everybody. Welcome to our returning series on the Best Defense Foundation Stronghold program, where we've been talking about a reintroduction program, a service to returning veterans who have been working in Special Operations Forces. And our guests today are specialized clinicians. They are Rebecca Ivory and Pate. So, Rebecca, what do you do?
I'm a doctor of nursing practice and a psychiatric and mental health nurse practitioner.
And Kate, what are your credentials?
I'm a doctor of neurophysiology and a advocate for veterans and first responders.
So if somebody were to talk to me and throw out a question about a reintegration program for Special Operations Forces, and I were trying to explain what it is that you do, I don't think I could do it.
So I bring the lens of neurophysiology to this, which is to understand both neuroscience and physiology, or how the brain controls physiology, which when we're talking about veterans, we're kind of discussing a lot of different things that relate to that. So everything from chronic stress and brain injury to mental health discussions and what they might be facing in that realm. And really, I try to break it down in terms that they understand and provide tools around that from the lens that I have, which is as a neurophysiologist.
I work with Special Operations Forces primarily, as well as other veterans. From a psychiatric point of view. So I'm focused on things like TBI and traumatic brain injuries and other injuries to their nervous system and how it affects their mental health from the lens of their very specific kind of service to the country, the specific exposures they've had. I do education just like Kate, but I also do diagnostics and treatment. And my specialty areas are TBI and something called operator syndrome, which is long-term stress and the outcomes among Special Operations Forces.
Okay, there'll be a lot of old-timers who look at this and they'll go, come on, seriously? We didn't have this kind of therapy after World War II. We just got back and we lived our lives. Is the advance in technology and emotional impact that much different than it was in World War II? What's different?
You know, I would say that the difference is the world that we live in, the sort of backdrop to what they're coming home to. Is a very different thing, very different time. The types of deployments, especially for the folks that we work with in the SOF community, those types of deployments are very different. The training is very different. It becomes a much longer term career for many people, and the demands are really intense on the human person. And when you're doing that in a culture and a time that is not supportive of health, you're creating a perfect storm for physiological dysfunction. And with that comes mental health struggles. You see a lot of issues in training. We have different types of weaponry now, and in training, using a lot of that can be really high risk exposures for individuals. That's different than what people used to train with in World War II. So it's really apples and oranges to the degree that, the SOF community, the Special Operations Forces community, gets exposed to now compared to warriors during World War II.
For example, we have guys surviving things that absolutely nobody would have ever walked away from during World War II. They walk away from it now. And they seem okay, but are they okay? And we find in the work that we do that they are not okay. They have exposures to things like lead, blast, other very specific patterns of exposures related to weaponry, fire retardant, things like that, as well as the operational tempo. These guys don't go away and stay away. They go away and come home and go away and come home. It is it's common for a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL to deploy 10 times in 10 years, to be in harm's way for some period of time in those 10 years, basically every year, depending on where they are in their career and what they're doing. And they are surviving things, they are exposed to things, they have these very unique stressors, and then they come home. And unlike World War II, where everyone's served, where generally, if you were a male and able-bodied, you were in Europe or in Asia or someplace else in support. A very small percentage of our population serves. So these guys come home with very unique stressors and patterns of injury, and they don't have a lot of people to have brotherhood with, to share that experience with.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that absolutely does happen because your new normal, if everybody around you is experiencing the same thing and you're all kind of reacting the same way, it's sort of like, well, this is normal. Everybody's kind of dealing with this, and this is kind of, I guess, I don't feel out of the norm when that's what everybody else is going through too. And so when they spend a lot of time going through that together, they feel like that's how everybody is. And then when they spend time in the civilian world, especially during transition, or if they have a significant period of time where they're able to interact with people and, they kind of feel like a fish out of water, and they start to notice things. And then it always turns back onto them, and it's the question of like, what's wrong with me? And then they start to get curious around these things, and and if they have good resources and people working with them, they can point them in the right direction to help them start to feel better. But sometimes they don't necessarily reach out for help, or they continue to kind of push down those concerns.
So if they only want to talk about it amongst themselves, how does a program like Best Defense in Atlantis, USA, even make a program like this work?
So our focus here is peer-to-peer education and support. That is gold standard mental health treatment for veterans, really for everybody. While they have docs up here, myself and Doc Pate, we're here as educators, and we're here to back up the peer-to-peer when other things come up. But the real focus here is brotherhood. It's replicating sort of the team room, the team experience that they had while they were still serving. And a lot of guys find that this is the thing that they miss. And when you get a group of guys together, they are able to be vulnerable with each other. They're able to share their stories, find camaraderie, and process things that have happened to them, big and small. Especially when you have guys here who have maybe served together, served in the same branch, served at the same time. They are more alike than they are different. So they have the opportunity to have that shared experience and normalcy when they are working on their mental health, learning new coping skills, and sharing themselves with each other.
If you were to hold a seminar like this or an event like this, let's say in Atlantic City, or I don't know, at the Avi Resort in Arizona, would you get the same results? I mean, is it different actually going through all of this at 10,000 feet where, as I look behind the two of you, I can see mountain ridges that are probably 200 miles away?
Yeah, I mean, the container for this kind of an experience is critical. If you don't have, and when I say container, I mean everything from where you're sleeping to what kind of terrain you're walking out into, to what you're eating and who's around, whether it's the staff or support. That matters so much. And this place is special. I mean, there's nothing else like it. And there's something about this land and what Mike's created here and what this foundation has created that is a little slice of heaven. I mean, it's so peaceful. And when people feel that sense of peace, that those walls that are up and all of the, the armor that people wear, like, it comes down much faster and connection can form much faster.
So to reiterate, if you were to hold this at the Waldorf Astoria or a convention center somewhere, or even at Sun Valley, you wouldn't have the same ending impact.
No. This place is private and it's purpose driven. And when our veterans walk through the doors here, they know that they are cared for. They know what happens here stays within the container. Everyone who works here understands. They work with veterans so frequently that they have a good sense of how to interact with them. And we are absolutely allotted the privacy that we need in order to have these critical conversations for these men to heal.
So this is not a compulsory thing. It's completely voluntary. People choose to come here. So my question is, what percentage do you think of all the people that are out there that really need to get this training are actually showing up?
I mean, it's minuscule as far as how many people are actually getting getting access to programs like this. I mean, the need is so great, and it just continues to grow. I wish that this could be available for every transitioning service member, because it's so necessary. And sometimes, like we talked about just a second ago, people don't always recognize that they need it at that time. But whether it's for them personally or their brothers around them, like there's so much here that is valuable for people, and I wish that this could be integrated somehow in like a formal transition program for everybody, for all SOF members.
Now, to be honest, I've been to a couple of these events where there are people back for the second time. Great people, and they all said they loved it. They loved Mike, they loved Donnie, they loved the whole purpose of the event. But does that mean it's a failure if you don't get it fixed when people come to one of these seminars?
We have a very interesting formula here, which works really well. We have guys that we bring back that actually has nothing to do with failure, has everything to do with success. Since we have a peer-to-peer based program here, we want to bring back guys who are doing well, or who maybe have learned a lot and have things to share. So a lot of times when we have guys coming back, they're coming back because they are helping their peers and other veterans.
I've observed that there are no women here. Is that because there aren't any in Special Operations Forces, or is it because why?
It's partly because the number of women in SOF is so small that people just, I think, overlook it in general. But I would say that it's also kind of par for the course with women in some of these scenarios. I mean, even I'm a researcher, and so is Dr. Ivory, and we often see in research scenarios lots of data coming out on people studying men and men's physiology, and so I think women are just kind of considered to be small men a lot of times.
Yes.
So I think
not correct.
It's not correct. And
Yeah.
it's something that is often overlooked. But I think within the military, women make up a small portion, and within SOF, it's even smaller. And so people don't want to necessarily dedicate resources to that.
And I think we would love to do that in the future.
Yeah.
But we would absolutely need to do more outreach. We're
Yes.
sort of building the program right now, and I absolutely see that in our future. Yeah.
So I know a lot of guys who are veterans. They have been for a number of years, and they bottle this stuff up. They don't talk about it. What is the realistic expectation that you're going to be able to get somebody to come to an event like this and actually open up and become vulnerable?
I can't think of a single man who has come through this program who did not participate and actually vulnerably share himself and process. Yep. This program is different.
So how do you really achieve it with really stoic individuals?
I mean, honestly, there is a part of self-selection, not in the bad way that these guys would resonate with, but like the self-selection of their choosing to be here. So there is already some inherent motivation. And I think if somebody's already interested and curious and willing, that you will be able to get through to them much easier. If people are absolutely resistant and it's pushed upon them, I think there's very little chance of success. It's not impossible, but if something's forced upon somebody, like the people that you're mentioning who are absolutely resistant and wouldn't want to come, if nobody wants to be here, I don't think they're going to get anything out of it. But if they're choosing to be here, even if it's like a tiny little sliver of a choice of just like, I guess I'll go, I think that's enough. We can work with that. That's enough.
I think it also comes back to the container and the privacy and the safety with their peers.
So, Dr. Ivory, do you think that there are people who actually come to one of these events? I don't know, how many of you had, like 14 of them? 14? They actually come to this event not because they felt they needed the therapy, but because they wanted to be in this setting.
I don't know.
I can't think of anyone. Yeah. Yeah. I think they all appreciate this space.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Very much.
A lot of the guys who come here tend to be outdoorsy anyway. If you think of the type of person who chooses to become a special operator, they are people who enjoy the great outdoors. So I think this is very much an added bonus.
During the course of this event, they caught a bear on the property. I thought that was intriguing. And the DNR guys, the DWR guys that picked up the bear in the trap, and they tranquilized him before they were going to move him to another location. They said, hey, the veterans want to see this bear while it's tranquilized. I mean, it's very respectful, very nice, but the guys had a chance to get close to a bear that was living and breathing. Does that create a special bond? Does that make these events even more successful?
I think it is. I think it breaks it up and it creates some novelty. It creates like an experience for them all to bond over. You know, there's something going on there where it's new and exciting for all of us, and we get to just be humans experiencing this really cool, unique thing together that, I think they respect who we are as docs, but I also know that we're here to support them. But in those kinds of moments, it's like we're all just experiencing the same thing together with the same excitement. And I think that's really good for bonding for all of us. And I think it's really unique. And, these are guys who have incredible stories. And this is one of those experiences that they get to have together. That's one more memory that they get to kind of like, hey, remember when, And I think that's a really cool thing.
What would you guys like to see as the next phase? I mean, where would you like to... I know you guys have talked about it, but I see you smirking there right now. What's the next phase that really makes this work?
We are looking at a post-care program, Doc, Pate, and I together. How do we ensure that all the veterans who come through here have adequate, not just adequate, but gold standard post-care? Because the docs who come here know how to do this work in this very special population of people. And we're well educated and we're very experienced. So we are looking at some kind of a post-care program where potentially we follow every veteran for some period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are so many nonprofits that exist today, and everybody is trying to solve one piece of this complex puzzle for the community that they're either a part of or just like us that we have been adopted into and love and want to serve. And I think that sometimes with these programs, not Best Defense Foundation, but some others, they can be a very powerful experience in the moment, and then they lose track of people afterwards. And the experiences that were so profound and potentially life-altering for people kind of fall by the wayside, and they don't really feel like they're still connected and part of the group anymore after the end of the program. Whereas with the Best Defense Foundation, they really work hard to keep in touch with everybody, create group cohesion through different types of chats and discussions and checking in on people. But there isn't a formal way of doing that yet, which is why Dr. Ivory mentioned this idea of sort of formalizing the aftercare to make sure nobody slips through the cracks, and that if people find themselves back in a place of difficulty or needing extra support, that there's a protocol in place and that there are people ready to help. Because right now, sometimes people are in need and they don't know where to go afterwards, or if they do know who to reach out to, that person doesn't have any availability for them, and that's very deflating when you're in that kind of place. And so to make sure that you have something that's robust enough to capture and address all of these needs would be huge. It would be a game changer for all veterans, truly.
It almost seems like there's so many nonprofit organizations out there with their glass out trying to get a drink from the donation pitcher that and thank you, Dr. Pate. It's kind of a funny image. You just took a drink right when I talked about pitchers and glasses. It's a great metaphor. That none of them actually really get enough in the glass to quench the thirst for the operation of their foundation. Do we have to do some kind of consolidation at some point?
Yes, and I'll tell you what, the nonprofits, very best of intentions. There are a lot of funding issues, and there's also a clinician shortage. Clinician, coach, specialist shortage. We simply do not have enough people with enough education to adequately meet the need. So something that Dr. Pate and I have been talking about is potentially if we can stand something up here, can we help other veteran nonprofits with aftercare and with ongoing care for their veterans?
And I think a collaboration effort would be really valuable too, because some, like I mentioned, some nonprofits are focused on one piece of the puzzle. And sometimes we need several pieces in order to get us back on track. And so if we could create sort of a centralized, I don't know, database or something where, you know, a person comes in and says, these are the things I'm dealing with and this is what I need, who can help me? And there are organizations that stand up to say, we can handle this, we can handle that. I think if we had a better structure of collaboration in general, we could potentially share resources, help more people, sort of disperse the burden a little bit, the financial burden that it costs to care for people across different organizations.
So how do you set the framework to do that? I mean, you know, with VA's national, but they don't have the best track record. And there are individual states, I think most of them have an Office of Veterans Affairs, but, you know, can you actually pull that off? I mean, you know, you try and make that program work, they might just muck things up. I mean, it is a little politically risky, don't you think?
Not at all. It's not politically risky. We are talking about a very special population within the veteran community who have very specific, unusual types of exposures, like I said, with certain kinds of stress, certain kinds of substances, chemicals, as well as blast and other things, where the VA is set up to take care of all veterans. We take care of a very specific population of veterans from a place of community understanding, culturally congruent, culturally appropriate care. We understand their needs, their preferences, so we are able to meet those very specific needs.
So do you think it would be better to stay out of the government umbrella and keep this in the nonprofit private world?
I think so, absolutely. I'm not afraid to say that. Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think if, you know, and again, this is, you know, probably not an opinion that a lot of people would appreciate, but from what I've seen, I can only speak from my own experience. And from my own experience, I feel like if the VA as a whole were doing what it was meant to do, these nonprofits wouldn't exist.
We would not have to exist.
Yeah.
If the needs were being even just adequately met, not even well met, we wouldn't have a job.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But here we are.
I didn't set out to do this work.
No.
I mean, this was something I did because there was a need and I was asked, and I couldn't say no to people I cared about. But I had a whole other career before this.
Yep. Same. Yep.
You know, I realize that neither one of you are fundraisers, but often it's best to go into the trenches and ask the people who are actually delivering the service what's the best approach. But I mean, in reality, by the time the candidates and the other veteran organizations and the police and the fire guys and the widows and the pro-life and anti-life, and by the time all these people are done going through their thing, most of us at home that are being asked to contribute are just tired.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I would say, I think showing how the organization is impacting veterans is really critical. So is it moving the needle a little bit, or is it moving the needle a lot? Is it changing people's lives? Is it saving people's lives? If you can measure that and show that to people, I think that's a huge motivator for any donor. And I think also to sort of speak to the financial drain of many donors who care about veterans, but who are being asked by many different organizations, I think there could be some plans for resource sharing and collaboration that might spread that out a little bit over more organizations.
There doesn't have to be a loser, though. There really doesn't have to be, especially with what we were talking about earlier with setting up a post-care program that would potentially be open to other organizations. We don't have exact plans for that right now, just to be clear, but precise plans for how, as a concept, it's what we're working on. And so there doesn't really have to be a loser. These other organizations are fulfilling very specific needs that also need to be met. And they just also need ongoing mental health, continuing care for their veterans.
Yeah, an example of that would be like many of these different nonprofits provide coaching services. They all use different coaching people and have different programs. But if there was maybe a centralized coaching service that they wouldn't have to necessarily fund themselves, but that could be spread across organizations, that's one way where there wouldn't necessarily be a loser, but they would all gain something potentially by not having to invest all of their resources in that one piece of their program. So it's just one way to think about that problem.
Okay, so what's the one thing you want to see before the next stronghold? I mean, anything. It can be impractical. It can be impossible. But what would be the one thing you'd love to see?
I would say to integrate with active duty units and make this something that you could do while people are still on active duty as part of their official training program to help them get ahead of these things so that way they're not transitioning and dealing with things after the fact.
But now, haven't there been a couple of active duty guys who've actually come through these things?
For sure, but it's not a like an organized unit training, like a required training part of their training.
Yeah. For me, it would be bringing in the spouses and including that other person at home on the training. Maybe that's not it's not every stronghold, but maybe it's something that we do regularly. Maybe it's a couple times a year, whatever it looks like. I think bringing in spouses would be powerful.
That's an interesting thought, but you know, we've just been talking about how difficult it is to get these guys to become vulnerable, to open up, to talk, to share their inner insecurities and build this brotherhood and rely on each other. And now you put the princess in there. And she's going to be looking at her prince in shining armor, and he may not be so willing to talk.
I think it's different. You'd have to have time apart so they could have that brotherhood experience during the program, but then bringing people together for very specific experiences would be really important.
Yeah.
So you would need they spend enough time together at home, right? And you want healing to happen in partnership, in collaboration, and relationship. But I think getting them to be with the brothers or be with the other spouses where they can connect over similar experiences and know they're not alone and to share openly and then come back together as a couple would be ideal.
What percentage of retiring special forces actually go through the program?
Very low.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't
Very,
even know.
very, very, very low. And it's not because it's an exclusive boys club or anything like that. It is simply because we have limited funds to run a limited number every year.
It's quality over quantity.
Exactly. And I just also want to add to your spouse question that I think a lot of it too is giving spouses the same education that we are giving many, like their husbands, so that the spouses also have a foundation for understanding what is actually going on. And when there is joint understanding, there can be vulnerability between the spouses.
Do you actually have the capacity to fix all this if, say, your resources were doubled?
The two of us, yes. Yes, in conjunction with Best Defense, in conjunction with Atlantis USA. This has to be bigger than just Dr. Pate and I. This has to be bigger than the two of us. This has to be a well-funded, well-networked program. Yeah.
So if you got the resources you needed and you expanded the program, do you think those headlines we see that about veterans in trouble and trauma, do you think they would start to evaporate?
Yeah, I think it would take some time.
Yeah.
It would definitely take some time, but I think it's possible to make a meaningful dent in that.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate you taking your time out to be here, and you at home as well. Thank you for tuning into the Corrective Lenses podcast. Remember, we have one more of these episodes on its way to you, so take this opportunity right now to subscribe, mark it so you can get a notice when it shows up, tell your friends about these programs, and I invite you to go back and look at some of our earlier podcasts. And we'll see you next time on the Corrective Lenses podcast.